I've been practicing medicine for over 25 years, and I've seen it. The world is hurting, people are sick, and even with our greatest scientific discoveries and technological breakthroughs, trends in health are not getting better. We weren't designed for this. This world as we know it, it's not our home. But there is a remedy. Our Creator designed us to be resilient creatures, and He's given us clues in the scriptures that have dramatic implication for our lives today. Let's talk about biblical prescriptions. Let's take a serious look at living as God intended. Are you ready? Let's get well, and let's go home.
Welcome to the Biblical Prescriptions for Life podcast, presented by Heartwise Ministries. I'm your host, Nick Evanson, here with Dr. James Marcum, author of the 7-week Bible study, Biblical Prescriptions for Life. On today's program, we're going to be discussing awesome sites and how they change our chemistry. Dr. Marcum, welcome to the podcast.
Well, thanks, Nick. We took a little time off the last couple weeks. This summer's been busy, hasn't it?
Yeah, we've been busy doing a lot of stuff, both I know with families and with work. We've been doing a little bit of travel for both lately. I just got back from a trip to go see my in-laws. I live in the mountains in Colorado, and we had a great trip with the boys. The boys loved playing in the mountains and then the pool up there. And
now, what was the highlight for you on that trip?
Well, we went and did some mountain biking, and my in-laws live in a wonderful corner of Colorado with tons of mountain biking close by. And my wife and I are both avid cyclists. That's how we really enjoy getting exercise. And the difference is here in Tennessee, there's trees everywhere, and the riding is nice, but we don't have the views like Colorado. The views, a bicycle in Colorado can take you to places that you just have these amazing views of the mountains, and it's fantastic.
Well, that goes well with our topic today, our biblical prescription of awesome sights.
Yeah.
We're going to talk more about that.
But before we do...
Yeah, I heard you got a new bike too.
Well, my old bike fell off the roof of my car when I was going down the interstate.
You might want to share that, because that's in some ways, God has led you through all of that.
Yeah, I felt kind of foolish. I guess it wasn't directly my fault, but a strap on my car rack, the roof rack of my car, broke when I was coming back from a race down in Georgia, and my bike, I heard a thump, and then I saw it just flying off the back of the car, and I watched as cars behind me tried to avoid hitting it, but ultimately it got destroyed into 1,000 pieces.
How many people were hurt from all that?
Nobody. Fortunately, God worked a miracle, and nobody. There were no car accidents that I know. Nobody stopped and had a car that was damaged from it. So that was very fortunate. And this was a road racing bicycle, and I had a fair bit of money invested into it. And so I called my homeowner's insurance and asked them about it, and they ended up covering it. And I just got a new bike to replace it that actually is a bit nicer than what I had before for the same investment. So
that's miracle number 2.
It worked out okay, and I'm getting good exercise on the new bike. So
getting some awesome sights. Well, that's good. Well, we were telling everybody that tunes in or listens in. We got back from Houston.
What was going on in Houston?
Well, we went specifically to give a seminar there about how worship changes our physiology. But I'm also raising awareness of the worship study that's ongoing in different phases that Heartwise is doing. Because as you followed us before, we talk about the importance of worship in changing your physiology, how in that relationship with Christ is where you should start in health. So, of course, we want to have good worship. So good worship, good health, good power. And we now can change our own DNA through the process of worship. And we want to do a study on biblical worship, showing how it turns on the genetics, changes the epigenetics, lowers, we're hoping to prove this, lowers the risk of chronic disease, helps treat diabetes, heart disease, inflammation, slows down aging. All of the chronic diseases can potentially be treated by worship. And we've seen this on preliminary studies. We just want to do this on a larger scale. Can you imagine, the excitement if someone saw a study that says biblical worship lowers the risk of heart attack.
Right.
Biblical worship is a way to lose weight. Biblical worship is a way to lower your blood pressure. Biblical worship is a way to treat depression and chronic inflammation.
Right.
That would be powerful and get people looking for, well, what is biblical worship? What does that look like? So we've been spending our time not only promoting it, but we've now we're beta testing a 10-minute worship study, getting some people trying that. So we have that out there. It's developed, and we're working on that. And we're also talking about partners that can do the genetic testing, which is no easy task.
Right. Yeah.
Sequencing millions and millions of genes and analyzing them, what they do and turned on. That's no easy task, but we're working on that. So this is a long-term project, but we want people to pray for it, that God will bless us. And if this is what he wants us to move forward with, it'll continue to move forward. That's what I was in Houston to do.
Right.
And also I was lucky that I got to spend some time with my brother, John.
Fantastic.
Yeah, we had breakfast together one morning and had a good time. And you and I got to do some bicycling in Houston.
Yeah, we got on the city bikes and we cruised around the city for a little bit on the bikes. That was a highlight of the trip for me.
Yeah, that was fun. Downtown Houston. It was a lot nicer than I thought for bicycling. I didn't think it would be a bicycling destination, but it turned out pretty good.
Yeah, the bike lanes that we found in the city there were quite nice.
Yeah, and even though it was a city, I still had some awesome sights that I could look at and appreciate God.
Yeah.
And so we did that for a while, and then we took a family vacation to New York a couple weekends ago, and I got to see the World Trade Center and go into that museum. That was unbelievable, and the sacrifices that were made, and that was just an unbelievable experience. And I got to review a restaurant, and if anyone's interested in healthy eating, go to our website, heartwiseministries.org, look on healthy eats. We're always looking for someone to go out and eat at a healthy restaurant and write another review for us. So if you're interested in that, that's a great place that you can participate in some of the work of Heartwise. And people are actually starting to use that to pick restaurants out now.
That's right. Yeah. These aren't places that we necessarily aspire to go to all the time.
Right.
But when you're traveling, you need a good, healthy option.
Yeah.
And so that's some of the ways we get these reviews is we go find places ourselves, and other people are submitting reviews too. So heartwiseministries.org, and then on the front page there's a link to the Healthy Eats section. And you can find reviews there by state and also submit your review there at the bottom.
And I had someone that actually used that site not too long ago, and they said, there's other sites that have more places, but they like our site because it's personal. And it doesn't have as many. So you don't have to guess. When you see 10 places in it,
Right.
one or two that's I can depend on this place.
Right.
It's open.
That's right.
I know what I'm going to get. I know. And I try when I go out to a site, I try to be honest. For instance, I went to a place in Manhattan that was right probably two blocks from Wall Street. Okay. And on the board, you walk in and you wouldn't even think it's a healthy eating establishment. Because everything, barbecue beef and, barbecue this, it had the
pulled
names.
Pork.
Right, pulled pork, all the traditional names, but all that was made with whole food plant-based diet, whether it be a aceton or bean derivative. And it was really incredible, but you wouldn't know that from necessarily walking in and looking from the street that was necessarily a healthy restaurant.
So they were all dishes emulating traditional meat dishes, but with plant-based foods.
Yeah, and it was good.
Awesome.
And that place was great for a lunch, but I wouldn't want to go there for a fancy dinner. It was more a sandwich type, grab it, you sit at a sort of a bench and you eat and you move. And I guess that's the way people in New York are. They move in and out. But the prices were very competitive. It was probably cheaper than going to a McDonald's and getting a Happy Meal.
I know a lot of stuff in New York can be expensive. We've been to New York City several times, and
So I got to review that side. But anyway, if you want to participate in that, just check that out. And we'd love for you to write a review of a place. And you can even write a review that we've done before if you would like, and see if you agree with it.
That's right. Yeah. Now, just yesterday, we got word that someone was sharing biblical prescriptions for life in Florida to a team of ministerial leadership. And tell us.
Yeah, there's a group there, a denomination and their leadership of 200. They presented biblical prescriptions to that. And that's happening. And I'm speaking to another group of ministers in September about biblical prescriptions for life. And what makes us a little bit different, there's other programs out there, but we really stress the physical and the spiritual, the importance of starting with Christ and uplifting Christ. It's nothing that we do. We can't eat our way to health. We can't exercise our way to health. But you know what? Christ can do all that and give us the power to change. And that's what we really emphasize in this program, is the relationship with Christ, how he gives us the power to make change in the framework of a relationship one step at a time, and how the physical and spiritual go together. And health isn't just one thing. It's all the inputs of life, whether it be exercise or being outdoors and seeing awesome sights, whether it's eating correctly, mental health, the things we put in our body. But without the power of Christ, without uplift, having him involved, we're doing it for the wrong reasons. And that's a selfish reason. And that's not the way we want to change. We want to change because of the power of Christ in our lives. And if you think about Christ when he was here, he healed lots of people. But all those people eventually died. Mm-hmm. And several times he passed up a group of people because he wanted to preach the gospel. Right. The real way of healing. Mm-hmm. And I think, everyone wants a miracle in health, but the true miracle is when Christ comes into your heart and transforms you.
That's right.
And gives you the power to be something that genetically we can't be, because genetically we're all hardwired sinful. Mm-hmm. We can't do anything good in ourselves. It's impossible. Right. We need a savior. So if I'm out swimming in the ocean, I don't want to see an example of a great lifeguard swimming in front of me. No, I want that lifeguard to save me.
Right.
So I need a savior to pull me out of the mess I'm in, because I can never get out of it myself. I can't do it. Genetically, I can't do it. So I need a savior. So this program starts with that relationship and the joy that comes in it, giving you the power to make positive steps one at a time for the right reasons. And for some people have taken, it's just been drinking water or going outside or moving the body parts or eating more oatmeal in the morning or learning how to handle negative thoughts or even learning how to worship better. So that's what we've been presenting all over the country now. And it's really, and I heard we had some people in Illinois that got going on that.
That's right. We had a group in Illinois just this past week order 25 books. So it looks like we're going to have a group. It's interesting. We get groups from all different denominations starting this. Mm-hmm. And it's been so interesting to see all different denominations finding interest in this health study, because it's not denominational. We're not trying to push any particular doctrines, but we just want people to experience the health that Jesus intended for us and live the lives the way he intended.
Yeah, and uplift Christ.
That's right.
And present the everlasting gospel. Mm-hmm. And then let Christ through the Holy Spirit make changes in people.
That's right.
And what's very exciting, Nick, is when people do this, they can actually feel God working in their lives, making changes. And we're going to actually do some science behind it January of next year. I'm hoping to have a group of 20 people that do biblical prescriptions. We're going to study their biometrics and their genetics before and after, so we can have some evidence-based proof of what this worship series and getting back to God's plan can do for us, especially for the treatment of chronic disease. Now, we're not saying that there's not a place for modern medicine. There is, but it doesn't usually fix everything. It just gets us over the hump so we can make some changes to treat chronic diseases. Mm-hmm. And we're never going to heal all chronic diseases. Only Christ is going to heal us in heaven. And that's the joy of this. There's hope not only for today, but there's hope for eternity. So, we better get on to our topic today before we forget.
That's right. Now, we mentioned in the beginning, we're going to talk about awesome sights today. What is the most awesome sight? Not that you've seen this last week, but prior to this last week, what was the most awesome sight you've seen in your life?
I'll tell you, Nick, there's been just so many. It's hard to pick out one, but I can remember going to the Grand Canyon with my kids and walking to the ledge and going, awesome.
Yeah.
I can remember that.
Yeah.
I can remember occasionally driving to work early in the morning and seeing the sun peek up over the horizon and saying, awesome. Mm-hmm. But this last week was just a tremendous one. And I'm sure everyone has marked on their calendar August 21, 2017.
Yeah.
And that's when we saw, that's the first time I've spent much time talking about a solar eclipse. We have the sun, we have the moon and the earth, whereas versus a lunar eclipse where you have the sun, the Earth and the moon behind. Of course, lunar eclipse, they call it the blue moons, aren't too dangerous. Okay?
Right. You can observe those without any danger.
You're looking at the moon.
Yeah.
And the moon looks a different color because the sun doesn't directly hit it. And they call it a blue moon or whatever. Blue moons has been very significant to the Jewish nation. They call blue moons omens. Comes at certain times.
Right.
Well, lunar eclipse, they say that that's an omen to the Gentile nations. Okay. So, of course, the United States is the greatest Gentile nation. And everyone made a lot of big deal about it because, it happened the last month of the Hebrew year, 40 days before the Day of Atonement, all this stuff's going on. But I just thought it was an awesome sight.
Yeah.
A sight where I could just see it and say, wow, God is great. And you got some really good footage on it.
Yeah. So we actually are in Chattanooga, Tennessee. That's where we're based out of. We happen to be very close to the path of totality where you would get to observe the total solar eclipse. And you were at your office practicing that morning.
We didn't quite get a total, but we were awful close to that.
You're very close to the edge of the total.
Yeah.
I drove up the road about 45 minutes to Athens, Tennessee, and there was a ballpark there, just a municipal ballpark, and it's just off the interstate. So that's where I went. And there was a lot of people. The traffic wasn't bad until I got to where we were turning in, and then it just took 20 minutes to get inside the park and get parked and whatnot, because everybody wanted to come see it. It was a very popular spot to go. And so I got there a couple hours early, and I got my camera set up, and I started talking to people next to me. There was one couple next to me from New Jersey.
Wow.
And they were telling me about all the famous people that lived next to them, but they came all the way down to Athens, Tennessee. They're retired, so they came down to Athens, Tennessee to see the total solar eclipse. And the gentleman on the other side of me, he had brought his welding mask to watch the solar eclipse, which I used one of those when I was a kid and saw not a total, but a solar eclipse. And he was from Ohio. So there were people from all over the country who came to the path of totality. And I've seen a solar eclipse before, but not a total. I was expecting it to be cool, but I was a little bit overwhelmed when the total eclipse happened. We had about 2 minutes and 34 seconds, I think it was, of total solar eclipse where I was located. And it was beyond what I had expected by far.
Yeah. So that counted as an awesome sight?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
For sure.
Now, if someone that's watching or listening to this today wants to see that experience, maybe it's not in person, but they can feel some of the power.
Yeah. So actually, we're going to go ahead and show it right now. And for those of you who are listening to the podcast, you can go find it on YouTube or on our Facebook page. We've posted the video there. But let's go ahead and just take a break here and watch it for those of you who are watching on YouTube. That's amazing. And for those of you who are listening on the podcast only, you got to hear the crowd's response there. I intentionally put a microphone on the camera, a good microphone, and pointed it towards the general direction of the crowd because I figured there would be some kind of response.
That was spontaneous, right?
Yeah, it was. We as the eclipse got closer and closer to the second point of contact, where it would be completely over, the moon would be completely between us and the sun. It got cooler, it got a little bit dimmer, but then when it passed and we saw the full ring of the sun around the moon, everybody just kind of was cheering and in awe. And I myself was really shocked at how excited I was about that. Well,
right before it got total, it looked like there were some different color beams coming through.
Yeah, there's a little rays of light and whatnot kind of around the edge.
I thought that was very impressive as well. That was another awesome. But it wasn't only the people that responded. How about, did you hear the nature?
Yeah, so there were birds and there were crickets that were very loud. The birds were kind of flying around and whatnot, but the crickets got loud like a warm summer night.
Yeah.
And they were just chirping away. After the initial crowd, celebrated and whatnot when we got the full eclipse, then it got kind of quiet for a little bit as everybody just kind of like took it in, and we could hear nature and all the animals responding as though they would at nighttime.
Yeah, I mean, I thought that was just an awesomeness that happened. And when you go through an awesome sight, Nick, whether it be seeing the Grand Canyon or watching the sunrise, or whether it be something, riding a bike out in nature, or seeing a flower or an animal do something special, those awesome sights that God's given us, those are inputs into the body. Mm-hmm. And whenever we have an input, we have a chemical reaction. So actually, that is a biblical prescription. And we can use those positive, awesome sights that God's give us to change the physiology of our body. I think you have some text to share us from that.
Yeah, Psalm 19:1 says, "The heavens declare the glory of God, the skies proclaim the work of his hands."
Yeah, that is a biblical prescription, because when we go and see that, not only do we glorify God, but we worship. We worship the Creator that made this. You know, we saw that awesome sight of the eclipse, and you felt something inside. That's real chemistry. And if we can do that on a regular basis, whether it be going outside or appreciate what God has on any different aspect, whether it be looking at a flower or even seeing a video that someone else has posted, or looking at a book, or going on a trip, or making these ecological journeys. I liked it. Like when I went to Galapagos, that was so fun because I saw the glory of God every day.
Right.
And if we're still here in 7 years, I want to try to see the next total solar eclipse. It's about in 7 years,
right?
So I'm going to have to drive a little bit for that one. But whenever we experience this, there's physiology. Now there's science behind that now. In fact, a group at the University of California did a study of people that saw awesome sights. And I think they had over 200 people that had an awesome sight, usually something from nature, something that they appreciated. And they actually took blood samples and measured a chemical called cytokine. And cytokine is a chemical, it's a bad chemical really, that our body makes when it's under stress, under inflammation. So it's not one we want to make. Well, they measured the cytokines in people before and after an awesome sight. And they noticed that the cytokine level decreased. So that just tells me that when we see awesome sights, it lowers the stress chemistry of the body. So if it lowers the cytokines, it probably lowers other chemistries related to stress, which raises our blood pressure, which raises our blood sugar, which causes our brain not to work as good, which causes us not to sleep as good, which ages our genetics so they have mutations. So this is a study on a preliminary level showed that God, through this text of declaring his handiworks, giving our bodies awesome sights to see, is giving us biblical treatments to make our bodies better. And today, the message we have is we want people to plug into that treatment that God has given us. And you could also, not only is it an awesome sight, but you can make it into worship. You know, going outside in nature, walking on the beach, looking at a shell, whatever does it for you, that's a form of worship, an awesome sight that changes your chemistry, that slows down aging, that is truly a biblical prescription, but you have to go out looking for it. Isn't that awesome that God has given us these sights that change our physiology or chemistry? And I would just love to do more studies on sunrises and beautiful stories at the beach, or people riding bikes or looking at the Grand Canyon. But we saw that eclipse, and that changed my physiology. Yeah. And can you imagine if you lived day in and day out in that majesty, in that glory? Can you imagine every single day having that awesome sight? Well, you know, we can have some of that here on earth. When we come into a relationship with our Creator, you know, that's pretty awesome in itself.
Yeah.
But he can lead us to things that sometimes we don't appreciate, you know, and all of a sudden we think, wow, this is an awesome sight, you know, and it might be things that we don't realize, like someone helping someone else out. doing something kind. It might be feeling the wind on our face. That might be an awesome sight. Or watching an ant do his work. Or it might be something big like a snow-covered mountain. And that's what we want to try to do is in our ministry, give awesome sights. And I want to invite people to watch this eclipse again and again and experience that chemical change. Not a lot of side effects with awesome sights,
right.
But this is another biblical prescription that can potentially help our bodies in many ways, from a worship standpoint to a stress standpoint to making everything feel just a little bit better. And it also gives us hope for the future, because if it feels this good now, can you imagine all the other beautiful, awesome sights we have as we look at the entire universe?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
We have a lot to look forward to. So that's our biblical prescription. And that was a great text. What was that text again? One more time, Nick.
It was Psalms 19 verses 1. The heavens declare the glory of God, and the skies proclaim the work of his hands.
And I wrote a blog recently from the Psalms too, about how awesome.
Yeah, Psalm 66:3.
Yeah.
Say to God, how awesome are your works.
So say to God, how. So these are biblical prescriptions that we can apply to our health.
Yeah. Well, Dr. Marcum, thanks for bringing that to our attention. It was certainly a blessing and experience for me to go up and film the eclipse. It was way more interesting than the video actually shows. The video is okay, but being there in person was just 10 times better.
Yeah.
And I wasn't expecting that, and I was just kind of overwhelmed with, our Creator God has done so many awesome things for us, and I just thought about all the people sitting there watching it.
Yeah.
Whether or not they realized that our Creator designed this to happen for us or not, they all had a shared response with me. We all were overwhelmed by how awesome it was.
Better than the Super Bowl, huh?
Better than the Super Bowl, for sure, for sure. And so, I thought it was just a fantastic thing. And, hopefully those people will think a little bit more about how awesome it is and realize that this had to be by an intelligent designer.
Absolutely.
So, well, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast. This one is a little longer. We got carried away catching up on what we've been doing since we haven't been doing podcasts the last few weeks. But thank you so much for tuning in. And we're going to have another podcast out soon. So stay with us, and you can give us any comments or questions at biblicalprescriptions.com/podcast. And we'll try and get those answered on a future podcast. So thanks so much. And we look forward to talking with you again soon about getting well and going home.